Welcome to another video where we attempt to add just another grain of information to the vast ocean of knowledge that is the internet, specifically related to public policy. Now today we're talking about the first iteration, the formal version of a gun repossession law that was drafted, proposed, and voted on in committee today in Virginia. Now this bill, Senate Bill number 16, will be linked in the bio, and before we even jump into the controversy, I must state that we live in a representative democracy, and it can only function properly if you know enough about legislation to form an opinion about it and let your legislator know what you think about it, so they can represent your opinion. The way this country works is by having an informed citizenry. So that means listening to this video, reading the bills themselves, and following actual political news like this. Now this bill, Senate Bill number 16, was proposed in committee and voted against. It was deferred for a year. So that means in Virginia, there should be no more assault-style firearm ban proposals discussed in the 2020 legislative decision. That's good news for some and bad news for others, and in this video I'll form and talk about no opinion on either side. It's already difficult enough to give nonpartisan public policy reviews, but usually I still state what both sides of the aisle think about a bill, why they form the opinions that they do, and what the purposes of their opinions are in the long run. You can watch my other videos and hear those opinions. But because of how controversial this bill is in itself, I'm just going to state exactly what it says, provide you links to the actual language, and let you form your own opinion from scratch. There are just too many opinions about this issue to even start and begin to explain them. This won't be the last gun review video this week. Rhode Island is also proposing new gun reform bills that we'll be discussing in just a few days. I want to wait and let them actually be written before we discuss just news headlines, because that isn't news. I try to form in these videos a new frontier, what young millennials should be thinking about in terms of public policy and politics, and it's not what you're hearing on most cable news networks and reading in the newspaper. What people say and do isn't news, it's what's written, proposed, and spoken about on the House floor. Now this bill in particular is the product of Governor Ralph Northam. Him, along with the Democratic trifecta control state of Virginia, meaning that the Democratic Party has both chambers of the General Assembly and the governor's mansion. It allows them to streamline changes legislatively. Now, Governor Northam promised and proposed gun reform legislation. However, to much of the shock to most of the country, the bills that he has thus far proposed were voted out of committee today by both Democrats and Republicans. Some newspapers even went as far as to say that it was balked out of committee or laughed out of committee today, voted against by 4 Democrats. As far as I could find in records, all of the members of the committee voted against this bill, but don't quote me on that. That's just what I was able to find in the few records that were provided on Virginia's legislative website. Now, the bill itself does 3 things. First, it lays out how to properly buy a firearm. What is the process? Second, it defines assault-style firearms, and as we know from watching this channel, all major public policy change occurs in the definition section of bills. Almost every change you're going to find comes in the form of a definition. If you can control the language, you can control the outcome of legislation. Third, it goes ahead and bans all firearms, but doesn't stop there. It also bans the possession of firearms, which is where mandatory buybacks or repossession laws come into play. First, we'll go over what it's like to buy a firearm. The bill first drafts standard criminal background checks, but also adds that all your records will be kept by police for 30 days after purchasing a firearm, and a year if you purchase more than one firearm. 2 is redefining assault-style firearms. Now, Senate Bill number 16 had an original definition for assault firearms or assault weapons. They use the awkward terminology of assault firearms in this bill. And the original definition required an assault-style weapon that was both semi-automatic and had a capacity to hold more than 20 rounds. Now, if you look at your standard pistol, rifle, and most weapons, I'd say 90+% of weapons that you may own in your house, they probably don't have a magazine capacity greater than 20 rounds. However, this definition was changed in new Senate Bill number 16, which is the one that was voted on. The assault firearm definition changed to guns that not only shoot semi-automatic, but also shoot single fire or one bullet at a time, and have an excess capacity of 10 rounds. Now, changing the excess capacity in the magazines that can be used in a firearm from 20 to 10 changes the number of firearms affected by the bill from just a few to almost all firearms that could be possessed by a person today. As I walk through the other definitions that are given for assault-style firearms, the only guns left out of the definition provided are some shotguns, not all shotguns, antique firearms, and some revolvers that hold less than 10 rounds, which most revolvers do hold less than 10 rounds. Also, while the original bill written and proposed only had one definition for assault firearms, this new definition had a variety of definitions that could be used to capture a gun and put it within the definition of assault-style firearm. The new definition varieties include having a folding telescope stock, thumb holes in the stock, bayonet mounts, grenade launchers, flare launchers, silencers, and most uniquely, or at least what caught my attention, was they said guns with threaded barrels. I think what they meant to discuss here was barrels that are threaded at the tip to allow for the attachment of a silencer or an extension to a barrel. But just saying threaded barrels will cover a majority of barrels since most barrels have some threading. But I believe they're trying to capture just preventing silencers or the ability to attach silencers to weapons. The bill also includes any part of a firearm that could be used to make or alter a gun into this definition, and extends the penalties given for possessing an assault firearm under this definition to just possessing parts that could make a gun into an assault firearm. So this means just possessing a stock with a thumb hole, even if it's not attached to a gun, or just possessing a silencer, could render you the same penalties as possessing a completed firearm with a silencer or a stock with a thumb hole, which would then make the gun an assault firearm. Furthermore, and most controversially, this is the first piece of legislation we've seen that formalized what a repossession of firearms would look like. So we hear a lot about mandatory gun buybacks, which is where the government offers some sort of financing or incentive to purchase guns back. But we've also heard of repossession laws, or where the government makes it illegal to possess a certain type of firearm, forcing owners of that firearm to really give them up. And this is the first iteration we've seen of that. I'm just going to read verbatim exactly what the bill says. It is unlawful for any person to import, sell, transfer, manufacture, purchase, possess, or transport an assault firearm. A violation of this section is punishable as a Class 6 felony. Now, what you'll see, just the repossession portion, and as it would be read in court if you were to violate this possession portion of this subsection of the bill, is that it is unlawful for any person to possess an assault firearm, and that would use the definition that we discussed before, which would include pistols that have a magazine capacity of more than 10 rounds and are single fire, and that does cover a majority of firearms that are possessed by people today. Like I said, except for some shotguns without revolving cylinders or threaded barrels, and antique firearms and some revolvers that don't hold more than 10 bullets. So that is the wrap-up of what this bill states. Do not form from this language, this review at all, what you think my opinion is. I have formed no opinion on this bill. I'm giving you the most and probably only nonpartisan review of this legislation that exists on this website. So take it and form your own opinion. I beg of you. Help our government system work. Form an opinion and let your legislator know what you think about this bill. Even if you don't live in Virginia, these bills I cover on this channel are trending. Let your legislator know if you want bills written and proposed like this in your state, or if you specifically do not want bills written or proposed in your state like this. Let them know. It's their job not to represent their interests, but your interests. They're public servants and serve you. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed watching. Spread the video. Give a like, comment, subscribe, and we're going to have reviews every single day on trending public policy just like this. Thanks.